The first place she had checked up the front counter of the store, looking to see if there was maybe a note or a newspaper that had been left behind. To her surprise, on top of the counter was a lantern, conveniently placed for her needs. Unlike anything else in this place, it was fairly in good condition. There was even a knob for it for lighting it. Wondering if it still worked, she reached on and turned the dial on the lantern. A satisfying yellow flame sprung up in the center, illuminating most of the room in an instant. A stroke of good luck, Octavia mused, putting her lighter away. She grabbed the handle of the lighter in her teeth and then turned around to take a better look at the store now. It wasn't in a cast of darkness. Other than the dust that coated everything, Sugar Cube Corner looked almost exactly as it had been when she had left it all those years ago. The tables were still in positions as she remembered. The barren shelves would have normally been displaying impressive baked candy goods on the side. Even the old, shabby rug still lay on top of the wooden floor, as if it was cleaned up a little and the exterior fixed. It looked like it could open for business tomorrow. Strange, it looks like the place has just been abandoned, Octavia noted, looking around at everything. Just how long have the monsters been around town? The ponies obviously here didn't just evacuate. They tried to wait out the storm. The actual last letter from Pinkie Pie had been received a month ago. It was possible that the town had been like this for a month, but certainly she would have heard about it in the newspapers or something. The ponies would have contacted the outside world for help. Upon the princess, royal army, anything to deal with the elements of harmony wouldn't handle it. Unless the ponies couldn't contact the outside world, maybe the reason they would have had to been if they were. Stop it, Octavia, she cursed quietly to herself. You have no reason to blame everything that's happened to any pony. You're only scaring yourself. It wasn't really a sound judgment, but it sure needed to be. She was simply trying to keep herself calm, and she didn't want to believe that anything had happened to her sister, not unless she had more solid proof. She had already lost one sister, and she didn't want to lose another. Turning on her lantern, she spotted the stairs behind the counter, an old familiar stairs that just led to the upstairs bedrooms of the house. Each step creaked under her hooves, but she quickly made her way up. First thing Octavia noticed in the hallway was that the doors were boarded up from the outside, as if they were trying to keep something locked in the rooms. She then stopped on the side of Mr. and Mrs. Cake's room, or at least where it had been as she was a child, and it stared at it with worry. What possible reason could be in there to bar entry from the outside? Had something happened to the Cakes? Had they? Octavia gently shook her head, righting herself for her thoughts. She took a deep breath and calmed her nerves. She was there for a reason, to find out what happened to Pinkie, or the only pony for that matter, and she needed to check Pinkie's room. Down the hallway was the last door, the very door she needed, and too fortunate that it wasn't boarded up like the others when they were fillies. The two of them had shared this room until Octavia moved out on her own. Pinkie mentioned that she could never move out, so the door still needed to her room. The door opened with a loud creak, revealing the stairwell that led up to the loft. The stairs were just creaky and noisy as the downstairs ones, but soon she arrived at the floor's landing. Plenty of lights filtered into the rooms, and all the windows not being boarded up and blocking the light like downstairs ones were. Octavia then turned off the lantern and put it away in her saddlebag, before properly taking a look around. Deflated balloons, fallen streamers, and confetti papers littered around the floor. Pinkie's bed was just shoveled mess, with pillows and blankets on the floor beside it. A sofa and a dresser were visible next to the bed. Chips and holes were in the walls, and several broken pieces of furniture rested around the room. It hadn't changed much from when they were fillies, though, unless anything usable had been upgraded to be suitable for adult ponies. Leave it for my sister, leave it to be a mess. Octavia mirthfully chuckled. It was obvious that Pinkie wasn't there, but there was something more to that. As she stepped into the room, she couldn't help but notice that the layer of dust had been present all over the interior of Sugar Cube Corner was missing from Pinkie's room. Most of it like had Pinkie hadn't been around for a few days, or not months or years like downstairs. Outside the mess, it looked like she could return at any moment. Octavia shifted through the mess, looking through the room for any clue, a clue that could tell her where her sister went. She hoped that she didn't have to go dig around the trash and broken furniture to find any hints. but she was willing to do so if she had to. The light in the room glistened off for something, and her eyes turned to look at the table beside Pinky's bed. Stepping closer to it, the objects in the room became clearer, and there were ordinary silver key on the table. Laying on top of the piece of paper looked like a note. With a hopeful letter in their heart, Octavia picked up the piece of paper quickly, reading the note in the hope of finding a clue. I really enjoyed our last few sessions together. You make things much easier for me to bear. I know you have heard me say it again and again, but it makes the stress in my life melt away. Things have been so incredibly stressful for me as of late, though. I could really use your services again. So since I just earned my annual bonus for my job, I was thinking you and I could spend time together. And since I've got so much extra, I was kind of hoping we could spend some extra time together. But we could finally do that thing I've always wanted to do with you. If I ever had the money for it before, but now I do. I'll wait for you in our usual spot at the park. I include the key so you can come inside right away. I'll see you soon. That note was not what Octavia had been expecting, but at first it made her feel obsessive creep, as that was bugging her sister. But then it spoke to them about having to meet up multiple times, and for a fee. It seemed as if Pinky wouldn't want to meet up this in person unless they had the money to pay for her services. Octavia didn't want to think about what that could mean. It certainly didn't sound like that kind of thing the Pinky she knew would do. It sounded more like the back alley deal of services what would happen in Manhattan, rather than the wholesome little town of like Ponyville. In fact, the entirely possible this letter hadn't been addressed to Pinky at all. There was no name listed for the sender or the receiver, but the letter and the key that I mentioned in there were from Pinky's room, so it was safe to assume that she had been the one meant to receive it. Either way, it was the first clue that she had heard about ponies still being around town. It was likely that the note had been written before the monsters arrived, but since Pinky wasn't there, it was her only clue to her current whereabouts. Pulling out her map of the town, she unclasped her marker over the circled area and labeled Ponyville Park. She then followed the roads from Sugar Cube Corner for the fastest route between them. Taking a moment to memorize the path with a new plan of action, she folded the map up and put it away. As she finished tucking the map safely into her bag, the phonograph began to ring, causing Octavia to jump in surprise. Her head snapped up, looking back and forth in the room that was causing the sound. Had one of the spitters entered Sugar Cube Corner and was waiting for her downstairs? Or was it something else? Her pupils shrunk in her eyes as she locked in the metal mask staring at her from the window, an eyeless metal mask staring at her with the first-story window with no balcony. Blood smeared on the muzzle of its mask, while the bolts were roughly buried just above the eyes to keep the mask in place. Several painful-looking scars stuck out from under the metal plating. A stark crash onto its furless white skin, and its long neck was covered in barbed wire. All Octavia could see was the head and neck peering at her through the window, and it was staring right at her, its head ever so slightly tilted in curiosity. She then fell back, scrambling against the floor until her back hit the bed, her heart pounding in her chest as she stared at the creature. The phonograph's ring warned her that this monster was dangerous, and she couldn't even get near it, even with a wall and a window separating them. It was a threat to her. Just then, as quickly as it shone up, it turned and left the window. After a few seconds, the ring of her phonograph died off, returning the silence to the room. Octavia's breathing was still a little panicked, but her heart thudding against her chest. What was that? Octavia then stammered out, still processing what she had just seen. It wasn't different from the spitter. It was tall enough to look at the third-story window, and it hadn't noticed she was there. It knew where she was. Octavia had felt safe within the confinements of Sugar Cube Corner, but now the feeling of that safety was gone. There was nowhere in this town that was safe from the monsters that were waiting for her outside.